Are you tired of getting dominated by wrestlers in the cage? In this video, I'm going to cover 5 things you need to implement in order to negate the offensive wrestling threat of fighters like Chimaev and Khabib. I'll go over real-world examples covering some of the greatest wrestlers in MMA history and break down the strategies in detail. Let's go. Number 1. Forward pressure and defensive confidence. When it comes to facing wrestling-based opponents, many strikers often opt to retreat from their opponent in order to remain just out of range. This actually creates a massive problem though. Give or take a couple of inches, if you're out of takedown range, you're also out of striking range. Since you have to enter that range to strike anyway, you may as well do it where you're safer. Let me explain. Takedowns are much easier to defend and disengage from in the center than against the cage. It only takes a quick glance at examples where some of the most dominant wrestlers in MMA history looked briefly human to see this. The center of the cage allows you the room to scramble and maneuver without getting your back stuck against the fence, where your ability to threaten back with strikes or your own grappling is minimal. In this example, McGregor is able to defend Khabib's initial takedown very well, and at a certain point, if he had limp-legged out, could have escaped. We'll look at this principle in detail in step 5, but the point is, if you're facing someone whose entire goal is to dive for your legs and take you down, you need to develop a defensive confidence through reps and reps of defending takedowns in a striking context so that you know while yes, your opponent's likely going to shoot frequently to get the fight to the ground, you're capable of defending those attempts, and that each failed takedown is going to tire your opponent more than you as the defender. And if you absolutely have to retreat, don't do it in a straight line. Circle. Number 2. Offensive and counter-offensive wrestling. A reason most fights with wrestling-based fighters end up being one-sided is that opponents pretty well accept defeat before the fight begins. They're so scared of the wrestling exchanges, they're often afraid to so much as even threaten a wrestling offense of their own. This creates a predator-prey dynamic wherein the wrestler is able to just repeatedly dive for the legs as you pose no counter-offensive threat. If instead you're threatening takedowns of your own and counter-wrestling, you cause the wrestler to be more cautious and plan his shots more carefully. If, when the wrestler shoots, you're not only running and limp-legging, but providing your own counter-offensive threat, you give the wrestler more to think about than simply, all right, all I have to do is get the leg. In addition, threaten takedown initiations of your own. Notice that in rounds 2 and 3 of the Chimaev-Usman fight, Usman's forward pressure and takedown fakes slow the wrestling attempts of Chimaev. In arguably Khabib's toughest fight in the UFC, his opponent, Gleison Tibau, actually scored 2 takedowns against him. Realistically though, you don't even need to attempt your own takedowns. What you can do is use counter-offense to threaten to put your opponent on their back every time they shoot. Check out an example of this from Mark Hall in a duel against Ohio State. Watch how when his opponent's in on a single, Hall reattacks by picking up a single on the opposite side while his opponent still has his leg. He's then able to hip in and elevate the leg, forcing the opponent to unlock his hands and plant a hand on the mat. Hall uses this time to continue the angle and threatens the cradle, which forces the opponent to belly out and give up the takedown. Number 3. A substantial BJJ threat. If you can provide enough of a jiu-jitsu threat, a wrestler may not even attempt to take you down. For example, notice how immediately after Gilbert Burns is able to retain guard, Chimaev stands back up and opts to strike. He only thereafter attempts any takedowns with a short time to go in the round, knowing that he can likely win the round on the takedown and can survive any submission attempts for the short time there is left. Askren used a similar strategy in most of his fight against Damian Maia. We even see Makhachev back out and regroup as Charles Oliveira begins to pass under his legs. Now, that being said, I think Makhachev has the best jiu-jitsu of any wrestling-based fighter we've discussed. Number 4. Scrambling ability. By creating a scramble, you can increase the pace of the action so that you create a gap to escape and get back to your feet. You can often create a scramble by rolling, initiating your own counter-offense, etc. The main thing to remember is that scrambles require a lot more intuition than finishing on an opponent who's simply sprawling. We want to overwhelm our opponent with possibilities and create uncertainty every time he initiates offense. Number 5. The ability to disengage. One of the biggest mistakes people make when facing an opponent who's a more experienced wrestler than them is neglecting to take every possible opening to disengage from an attack when it's there. When someone's in on your leg, your goal should always be to get your leg back. You can sprawl all day, but if they remain attached to you, there are multiple ways they can finish. even if you're completely sprawled out on them. Make use of limp legs. Anytime you can get your knee above the opponent's lock, you can limp leg out. If your opponent's so much of a better wrestler that you wouldn't even dare initiate counter offense, you better make sure you're limp legging and kicking out whenever the opportunity presents itself. That's all for this one, guys. If you took something away from this video, give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you don't miss my future uploads. If there's something you want me to cover in the future, drop me a line below in the comments and let me know. I love hearing from you guys. I'll see y'all in the next one. As always, thanks for watching and good luck training.